I'd like to open up the September 23rd, 2015 school committee meeting. And for roll call, Kim, everyone present except Mr. Mullis, who will be here shortly. If everybody would join us, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. We have our agenda items of consensus, but I think they fell out when I was coming here. Wait a minute. You have all this. Thank you very much. Okay, approval of minutes for September 9th, 2015 regular session. Warrants G403, R202, L01, L02, L03, L04, 5, 6, and L7. And let me see, warrants CF. Can everybody do CF? Yeah.
Yep, I just can't do the FF.
Yep, CF, okay. And warrants CF04. So that would be letters A, B, and E. I'd introduce a motion. Mrs. Carroll?
So move.
Mrs. Broussard, second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Unanimous? Okay, payroll warrants 9/2, 2015, 9/16, 2015. Mr. Bjork?
So moved.
Second, Mrs. Burns. All those in favor? Okay, we have, good evening. No, good evening. 5 in favor, 2 abstain, Mrs. Carroll and Mrs. Kane. And last one is FSO2 and FSO3. Mrs. Bishop, yeah, Bishop. Mrs. Bonish.
So moved.
And second, Mrs. Broussard. All those in favor? 6 in favor, Kim. Mrs. Carroll abstain. Okay, thank you. We did that. Tonight we're starting one of our favorite things. We have our new member representing the high school as a student school committee person, and Superintendent Lahey is going to introduce her.
Yes, and welcome to our school committee meeting to Dina Singh. She's a sophomore here at Wilmington High School, and we tapped her as an alternate very late, so she was gracious enough to come here today. And so welcome to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're glad to see you.
You too. So let's start off. Well, first off, hi everyone. My name is Dina Singh. As you know, I'm a sophomore here at Wilmington High School. And today I'm representing the whole student body of Wilmington High School and also the student council. And first thing I wanted to address is that the school has transformed in numerous ways, and all of those ways have been for everything has been positive. I try to find details that are bad, but I'm just like, the good just overcomes the bad in this school. And starting off, I want to start off with the library. The library is like, it's a place to have a breather for a little, for all the kids after a stressful day of school. They come inside and they're like, you know, oof, we had that history test, but now you can just take a breather. And it's all the time, it's silent, so you can just be like, you know, have, you know, that mental stress will just slide away. And also the library offers many Chromebooks to students to do their projects, to print off some kind of homework that they need to turn in the next day or something if they don't have a printer at home, which is a very good thing in the school, because not many people at home have they don't have printers or they don't have computers. They can come to the school and have access to that. This library is probably a step up from our old school library, because it's the same thing, like minus all the books in the town library. It's the same thing with the town library and the school library. You don't have to walk to the library to, you know, wait for your mom or something. You can wait in this library and have the same facilities that you have in the town library. Next thing I would like to talk about is the Courtyard. Courtyard is something special to all of us, the faculty, staff, and the students. It's very spacious. It's a nice way to take a breath of fresh air, to eat your lunch there, to walk around, just to unwind after probably half of your classes you've taken, because you have free block probably there, or during lunch is kind of like our mini free block there. And I also really love the 9/11 memorial we have in the Courtyard, because it's just, first, it's amazing to look at, and I was really overwhelmed with conflicting feelings when I saw that. I was just like, because the display was actually designed by a former student here in Wilmington High School, and it included all of the events that happened in 9/11. And 9/11 is tragic, but it just shows that how far we've come from and how we stand today. And it includes the progress that we have here in Wilmington, and also going back to New York, how it's standing up today, which I really like. And it also makes people cognizant of what 9/11 actually means. And it was a tragic day, but it's also a day of remembrance that we can overcome anything that happens to us. And that makes our school much more unique, because I was a new student coming from Wakefield. Wakefield, I never noticed anything about 9/11. Obviously, they had, they enforced, like, 9/11 is this. They taught us what it was about. But I never saw something as great as a 9/11 memorial in a Courtyard, which is something to commend Wilmington on. The next thing I wanted to describe the cafeteria, the auditorium, and the gym. The cafeteria is pretty nice and spacious, and the thing I like about that we've changed is using the blue plastic hard plates that we have instead of styrofoam. Because first of all, it's good for the environment. We're not wasting all that styrofoam, throwing it into the trash, and also you can just, and it's good for school budgets too, because we're not wasting money on styrofoam, and we have the same plates. And we wash them and put them in the sanitation area, what our humble lunch ladies do for us. And we don't accumulate the styrofoam that we have. Also, there are a lot of healthy choices in lunch, if you haven't noticed. We have the salad bar still. We have the vegetarian wraps that we have, the sandwiches that people aren't feeling the hot lunch that day. We have everything's whole grain, and just because something's whole grain doesn't mean it won't taste good. It tastes pretty good. Coming from, like, I'm vegetarian, and some things I won't eat because it's meat, but the school offers those healthy choices, and I'm not starving that day. I have something to eat, which is good. And also in cafeteria, there's not one place to eat your lunch. There's 3 places to eat your lunch: the general cafeteria, the Courtyard, and also we have 3 separate breakout rooms that if you're working on a project, you want some peace and quiet, and you want to eat your lunch there, that's a really good place to have, which I think, Wilmington put quite a bit of thought in producing those breakout rooms in the cafeteria area. Next thing I want to talk about was the auditorium. Auditorium, if you think the old school one and now is majorly improved. The acoustics are amazing, and I'm part of chorus also here in the choir group in Wilmington, and we performed, and I was just like blasted with amazing acoustics and how well we sounded, because sometimes we going through puberty, we have some pitch changes and stuff, but I mean it's obviously Mr. L, my chorus teacher, makes it sound good, but the auditorium, the way it's been made, and the carpentry in it is really well thought out, and I was just like, that's pretty smart for them. And also, performances are really amazing there. It's like, for example, it's like going to Broadway, that live theater, the feel that you have. It's the same feel here without having to pay the price of going to Broadway, going to New York, and stuff like that. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the new improved gym that we have, and the fact that we have an indoor track above the gym, which I really, really like, because people don't like running, but it's good for our body, and it's good for our blood to run through our body and get our brain active and, yes, I'm ready to learn. Let's knock out our history test next period. And another thing is that I've heard that we're trying to make the indoor track part of the community, and the town can also come in and walk the track and do something. And during winter and those, rainy, snowy days that people don't want to go to a gym, they don't want to walk Silver Lake because, first of all, it's kind of dangerous, ice and stuff. I slipped on ice once, not going there again. It's nice to come inside in this atmosphere that everyone's accepting, and you can just walk the track and have like a nice discussion with your friends and stuff, which I think if we work on it, that would be a very good improvement in the community as well as in the school too. The other thing is I went into the fitness rooms a couple weeks ago and I saw the new fitness equipment they have. They have the new treadmills and stuff, and I was just like, this is like a mini gym here without the price of a membership. I was just like, this is pretty, smart that they have. And they also have a secured section of the balcony for yoga. They have yoga mats set up there, and I was just like, you know what, that's pretty cool because the balcony faces the courtyard, and the courtyard, obviously, it's open. There's no roof there, so you breathe in fresh air as you're doing some yoga positions with Miss Nardo. And I was just like, that just brings in more of a feel in there while you're doing yoga on the balcony instead of a closed room with the air conditioning air. Another thing I wanted to point out was that each classroom is soundproof, and that really provides a better learning experiment for us, because I could be taking a test in a room, and in the next room there would be a Spanish class doing a DDM with having to speak out loud with their Google Voice in the phone, speaking Spanish and stuff like that, and that escalates pretty much, and that gets pretty loud, and you don't want to be disturbed while taking a test. So all the teacher has to do is close the room, and it's like you can't hear anything, which is really, really good for us, so that nobody blanks out while they studied so hard, and they'll still have this information in their head, and that'll also affect passing tests, education. It's like one little detail can affect so many things in so many ways. The other thing I wanted to point out is the technology in every single room. Every single room has the updated projectors, and you don't have to align them in a certain way. They're already aligned for us. The big boards that we have for us, and Wi-Fi in every single room, which is good, because if we don't have access to the Chromebooks that day, we can use our phones to put, with teachers' permission. We don't use phones without teachers' permission in classrooms. Let me just point that out. You can use your phones to pull up Google Classroom or Schoolology and pull up an assignment to show your teacher or something like that, which is pretty good and efficient for us too. Pointing with technology also, AC and heat really contributes us having more attention in class, because first of all, if I was in the old school and we would come in during this, in the beginning of September, and it was a little hot in those days, and we would just be like, whew, it's hot. My history teacher would pull down his windows, be like, put up a fan and everything. Now we have AC and everything's ventilated, everything's just calmed down. We can just concentrate on what we're working on. And same thing with heat. You don't have to bundle yourself up in 6 different scarves and have a North Face winter jacket on. You can just come inside, have that jacket on, put it in your locker, and just forget about it. And just, stroll along the day, because we have these things like AC and heat that will help us move forward in the school day and in the school year. Lastly, ending a little long for you guys? A little long?
Just fine.
Just fine? Okay. Well, I'm on the last pages of my notes. And lastly, I just wanted to say that the Wilmington High School might have changed itself physically with the new building and everything. But one thing that does not need to be changed, and I say that with my full heart and everything, is that people don't have to change here. They have to, if they want to change themselves, they can, but the thing is, they have to stay the same way they are, because this town and the school is so accepting And we are not afraid to start something new, including schedules or accepting people from different countries. I've made 2 or 3 friends from foreign countries this year that have come from different countries, and that's like way out of my view that I never knew that I would come to Wilmington and be friends with someone who came from Venezuela. It's amazing to think about that. That's why, this school is so unique, that we offer so many things as to, if someone comes from a different country, no problem. If we don't know your language or anything, no problem. We'll help you through it. You might not know our language, but a month later, you'll be so, you'll be melded into this kind of environment that we have that is just so accepting. You won't have to change yourself in order to become a part of us. You bring in your imperfections, and we have our imperfections, that mine negative, positive. This is what I have to put out for you. And I'm really happy to be part of this community coming from, I was a new student, and now a year later, look, I'm in the school committee and I'm a student representative. That's how far I've come. It's amazing to think about that. And thank you everyone for this opportunity that, I get, even though it was alternative, it's just amazing just to be mentioned in student council, and that you guys have considered for me to represent the student body and the student council here.
Outstanding.
Thank you.
Dina, you gave us such a wonderful gift tonight. We can't thank you enough. It's really gratifying to hear, and I think that WCTV should get you for one of their programs that they're doing. Maybe you could be an ad for the school and the school system.
Oh, thank you.
I'm blown away. That was absolutely wonderful. We really, really appreciate you coming to us with that. Does anyone have any other? What's that?
I have one thing. You were a joy to listen to.
Yes.
Just to let you know.
Thank you.
You did a
Yes.
great job.
Thank you, we appreciate it, and because you were so good, we're going to have you stay the whole night.
I actually want to stay. I wasn't intending on leaving tonight. I want to stay. I did all my homework. I planned it out.
Oh, no, seriously, your dad might still have homework. So this is good how we've rearranged things, because you can easily go out that way, but you don't have to stay. But we really appreciate having you here. And
Thank you very much for the
Thank
opportunity.
you.
Thank you.
We look forward to seeing you another time.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. All right, excellent. Our next item of business would be the superintendent's report.
I don't even know how I follow that. So I'll try. I just have a few things to mention. First of all, the MCAS embargo will be lifted at 12:01 a.m. tomorrow, so Thursday. And at that point, we expect to get a fair number of media calls just asking for comment on the results of our MCAS. And we're obviously not allowed to talk about it publicly until the embargo is lifted. And we will do a full formal presentation on our performance in general, not just MCAS, but other data evidence that we have of student success from last year at our October 21st meeting. Did want to let folks know that I will be attending the Middlesex Partnership for Youth's annual Superintendent and Police Chiefs Breakfast tomorrow morning. Also, there is a School Safety Summit that is sponsored by Middlesex Partnership for Youth on October 1st that I will be attending along with 9 other folks from our district. We're allowed to send up to 10 people as a team to that School Safety Summit. Just to remind people, too, that October 9th is a full day in-service CIT day, so there's no school for children, but staff will be here engaged in a number of different in-service activities. And also a date has been set for the annual WEF Walk, which we will be doing in grades pre-K through 5, and that's on October 29th, which is a Thursday. And that's it for my report.
Okay, thank you. All right, our next report is going to be the SEI endorsement presentation. Did you want to introduce Susan?
Yeah, good. Sure. Yes. Actually,
Or is-
I'm sorry, what?
Sue and Kip, both of you going to present, so I think they're going to tag team this presentation. So yes, so Dr. Burnham and Mrs. McDonald will be presented to you on the SEI endorsement. This is a follow-up to last week's presentation where we talked about the ELL plan, and I know there were a lot of questions about the whole SEI endorsement requirements and process, so we're happy to have them come and explain that to you and answer your questions.
Great, thank you. Okay,
So before Sue starts with the slides, I'd like to just acknowledge the fact that we have an expert here in the district. Sue is a state certified SEI endorsement instructor for not only the full 3 grad credit course, but the bridge course, which is an abbreviated course for teachers who have had some training prior. And she's also a certified instructor for the administrator's SEI endorsement course. And she also was a member of the committee that developed the SEI MTEL exam. So we have an expert here. We are very, very lucky as a district to have Sue with us. So to answer some of the questions in more detail from the last meeting, I'll turn it over to Sue.
Thank you. Thank you. So I thought I would first give you a little background to the ELL program we have in the district here. Right now we have approximately, well, we actually have 33. We had 2 students that we just brought into our program today from the kindergarten. We're in the process of testing. We've gotten about 20 out of 30 tested this, and we have till next week. We're trying to do it before October 1st, before the SIMS data information's in. But right now, as of today, is 33 students. And the predominant languages at the moment are Spanish, Vietnamese, and Gujarati. However, the 2 students that we enrolled in our program today speak at home Urdu and Arabic. So,
Can I just interrupt there? What is
Yeah.
Gujarati?
Gujarati is a language, an Indian language.
Oh, okay, thank you.
India has hundreds and hundreds of languages, but Gujarati is very popular around here. And so the second bullet, we're currently testing students, so that enrollment has gone up a little bit. And there are 2 of us in the district to do the instruction, we're licensed ESL teachers. Okay, that's just a little bit of background about our department. And I also wanted to give you a list of some of the acronyms. As with anything, I think in the education field, there are acronyms. So ELL is the student, it's him or herself, and ESL is the program. And then ELD is what I do. Okay, so the ELL student used to be called LEP, Limited English Proficient. They're trying to change that because it's got such a negative connotation. But once they leave our program, and we have an exiting strategy designed by the state, they're called FLEPs, former LEPs. SEI, which I'll talk about, represents the Sheltered English Immersion. And then something that we don't really see in Wilmington is a student an ELL population called SLIFE. Those are students with limited and interrupted formal education. They're mostly refugees, so we don't see them here, but it's a population that is increasing tremendously. WIDA is the standards that we use with our curriculum, world-class instructional design and assessment. I believe Massachusetts is either the 26th or 28th state to come on board to WIDA, so it's used around the country. And the first one, Access, that is an equivalent to MCAS for our ELL students. So that's how we measure growth. And one of the tools we use to exit a student out, and that is given every January, right before MCAS. So our ELL students take MCAS and they take Access. Okay. So a little bit about background to the SEI endorsement. It was mandated because our ELL students just were not doing well at all in the state. They just had a very, very wide academic proficiency gap. They just were struggling. And that right now there's about 77, I think, thousand ELL students As of last year, that was the information in Massachusetts, which is, it has gone up, it's doubled in the past 10 years. So to close the gap, content area and teachers, those are our, and I'm going to explain what those are, but those are the classroom teachers. They really need to have the skills and knowledge necessary to teach ELL students, because they have them in the class. And that really came about because of the Department of Justice. Department of Justice got involved. There was a civil rights violation that was filed against Massachusetts. So the Department of Justice came in and looked over their program and said, you have something here, but it's not working. The students are not doing well. The programs you have are not being regulated well enough. So we're going to require this endorsement. Okay, and the endorsement is now required. Stop me with any questions, okay? Because, yeah, okay, thank you. Okay. So there are two parts to working with ELL students. One part is what I do, the ESL teacher does, okay? And I work with them on their English language development. It can include content area material, but we do have a curriculum. Okay. And the second part is the sheltered English immersion. That's what the content area teachers, that's using their knowledge to teach the academic content to the ELL students, and that's where they struggle sometimes, because especially in a district like Wilmington, we don't have a lot of ELL students, so we don't have a lot of experience working with them. That's the area where this endorsement comes into play and helps the teachers. So it's a two-pronged system. I am not a content area teacher, they're not an ESL teacher. This endorsement does not make them an ESL teacher. It just states that they have the skills and the knowledge to help the ELL students achieve academic success. That's pretty much the second one. Okay. So only core academic teachers have to take it right now, and they're actually called CATs. The state calls them CATs now, core academic teachers.
Yeah, I have an
Another one. It's just crazy, crazy. So a core academic teacher, as defined by the state, are early childhood, elementary, special education, reading teachers, teachers of English, language arts, math, science, civics and government, economics, history, and geography. Okay. So those are the only teachers who are required to get the endorsement. Even though there's language in health, and there's language in art, and they are not required at this point. And I think the main reason is the state mandated this, and they funded it, but I don't think they thought they could actually train 70 or 80, how many teachers we have. They're trying to reach about 27 to 30,000 teachers trained by the end of the next year for the endorsement. So they're limited to core academic teachers. Okay, so how do they get the endorsement? So there's a few ways, but two main ways. First one is through taking a course, which is what I'll be offering in the district this year. And there are 3 different courses. There's the full course. Those are for teachers who did not take any of the previous courses. At the back, there's a slide that kind of breaks down the difference of the way the system used to work and now it works, so it talks about the category classes. We used to have 4 category classes. I was an instructor for those. And I did offer them in the district. They were not required, so if you didn't have an ELL student, you didn't necessarily take it. Okay. But we did have about 8 or 9 teachers who took them all. So they got to take the modified, the shorter course. It's called a short bridge. So the long bridge is 12 face-to-face meetings. It is grad level. And they can, the state right now is paying for it during our cohort years. After that, the teachers will have to pay. And then the long bridge and short bridge, depending on how many category courses the teachers in the past had taken, will determine which course they take. We have a few taking the long bridge course. And then there's the administrator course, and that's for administrators who supervise and evaluate core academic teachers. They have to take the course. We have quite a few administrators who have already taken, I think almost everyone is taken in the district at the administrator level, just about. Or if not, they're signed up to do it this year. The other option is to take the SEI MTEL. So that was designed to be difficult. The Department of Justice did not want teachers just taking the taking the test. So the test had been redesigned twice. They finally accepted how Pearson designed it, and it's based on the course. So it'd be very difficult, and there's no prep program for it right now. It'd be very difficult to pass the test if you haven't taken the course. Of course, they want you to take the course. They want you to get the hours in. But we do have some teachers who have passed it and taken it. I think 2 teachers. So it is an option for those who, in fact, do well on tests, and there's material out there, but there's nothing planned. There's no teacher prep program for that right now. And that test, the idea is that test will go away in a few years because new teachers coming up in their preparatory programs will have the endorsement. That's supposed to have happened last year. I don't think it has, but I think it's definitely going to be happening that new teachers, either this year or next year, when they come into the system, they will already have the endorsement. So the test was designed to probably go away about 5 or 10 years.
The same is true for new administrators being licensed as administrators as part of their prep program.
So they do too, okay.
Obtain that endorsement.
This is the last year of our 3-year cohort. So the teachers have been able to take it during our cohort for no cost at all. But we were really limited to how many teachers we could send to training. So I think on the next slide I say how many right. So these numbers are based on the last 2 years. We were able to get 12 elementary, 10 middle, 9 high school, and 8 administrators trained. And that was because we were limited as to how many we could send. That number was, DESE chose about 14 teachers each year, maybe a little less, depending on how many ELL students we had enrolled. That's how they based it on. Plus, they had the larger districts that they had to get teachers trained in, so they gave them most of the spots. However, this year, and so many teachers were surprised when they got the letter in June, this year, any teacher who had an ELL student the last 2 years and didn't have an opportunity to take the course, or will have one this year. So basically, any core academic teacher during the 3 cohort years had an opportunity to take it this year for no charge. So we do have, I got the list, we have about 45 teachers registered right now. There's a few on wait lists, but we do, almost everyone who was on the list did sign up or did register. There is an issue with having enough courses available because they don't have enough instructors, but we did get a lot of teachers to register. So some are taking it right now. It starts October 1st, semester 1, and then in my class, I've got 35 teachers from Wilmington who got in. And literally, it was at 4 o'clock, they opened up the registration last week, Monday, and at 4:08, I got my first email saying the course is full. So teachers are waitlisted, or some teachers found it in other communities closer to them. And that was set up, it wasn't us, that was set up by DESE. They said we were allowed to teach one course. I offered to teach one each semester. The courses are run after school, by the way. They're after school, they're 4 to 7, and it does involve the 12 face-to-face, and it does involve some time online in PLNs, and so it's a big undertaking. But I personally think it's a really good course. I found the information really interesting.
Can you speak to what happens with the waitlisted folks?
Right now, they are going to look, because I called to say, can you open up like 5 more spots? I have 5 more teachers waiting. I'll instruct 40 students, I don't mind. And they said they were waiting probably till next week to see what the numbers look like and if they were going to open up more spaces in certain classes or they were going to offer more classes. So they do understand this is a big year for them because this is the last year that teachers can take it for no cost.
I was told, I don't know if this is, it's true for this person, that in another school system, there was a trainer like yourself, and she would volunteer to do more courses, and they wouldn't let her.
They don't let you. The reason why is they don't want to pay you.
That's what
You know,
I.
they're paying me, but they're being very controlling over who does what.
Right.
However, I do get emails saying, you know, we need someone to go down to Fall River and teach. We need someone to go here and there. So they do have spots, but they don't have them where people are willing to, you know, host more.
Who put together the content? for
The
this
content is
course?
put together by University of Boston instructors there. And the Department of Justice, her name is Dr. Calderon. And she was at the training sessions I went to make sure, and the Department of Justice representative was to make sure that DESE was training us the way the course has to be presented. We are not allowed to make any changes to the presentation.
There are unannounced visits to the classes?
Yes, I get observed. The instructors do get observed, which is cool, it's no problem. But yeah, and they do a lengthy evaluation of you.
I was wondering, knowing that this is, part of teacher certification, and with regards to what you've just spoken about with limited classes, the cohort and then payment, what steps is the district doing to ensure that those core teachers who, I'm concerned about the certification, as to when does that kick in when that is threatened? Wasn't quite sure if there was a process.
Yes, and that's definitely a big issue. So right now, the way the licensing works is that if you've had an opportunity to take the course and you turn it down after July 1st of this year, and actually if you're going from initial to professional after July 1st of the next year, you will not get, if you don't have the endorsement, you don't get recertified. Okay. So what's happening now is Dr. Burnham and I talked about what can we do in general as the district level, and I found out that the Department of Ed wasn't letting us run our own training. They did not want to lose control of that. So the other option is to work with collaboratives, because collaboratives can offer it right now for cost. There are some people who take it for cost. Okay. I think it's like $400 is the cost of the program, I believe. I'm not too sure. I could be wrong there. So maybe working with the collaborative. But right now, that is a big issue. Now,
are we capturing staff that may have been in that position where they may have declined when, my thing is I know that if they're not certified, that, correct me if I'm wrong, they can't teach?
They can't teach an ELL student.
Oh, okay.
They can't have an ELL student in their class.
Okay,
thank you. But it can affect their, yes, it can have more consequences. What they had to do, and it gets really confusing, and I added this slide on, I don't know, oh no, it's not here, okay. So I added a slide on, and I have a hard copy for if you're interested. It kind of tells you what happens, I don't know. Okay, so what happens if a teacher never had an ELL student and they go to recertify and they have to have this endorsement? They don't have to have the endorsement. So DESE is looking at the SIMS data to see who had an ELL student and who taught it, and they're supposedly going to match that up. So if you've never had an ELL during our 3 years cohort, you do not have to have the endorsement. However, if you get an ELL in your class, and it's probably going to happen, you will have 1 year to get the endorsement. I don't know how they're going to enforce it. 1 year to get the endorsement, or your licensure could be in jeopardy.
And the only option for getting endorsement at this point is to go through maybe the collaborative or take the MTEL if it's still available.
Right.
After this year.
After this year.
So honestly, I'm sure there's going to be some changes coming up onto that, but right now, that's what they say. So.
Thank you.
So not unfortunately, because our kids are wonderful. And the student you talked about from Venezuela is my student who just came here. So she's doing very great. And everyone here has been wonderful to her. The foreign language department, everyone's been working really wonders.
I have a quick question.
Oh, yes.
The number that you said was 77,000 in the state, is that for ELL students?
Yes, about 77,000.
And we have 31, so.
We have 33 now.
33. So
Yes, we're considered low incidence because we have under 100. under 100 ELL
Do we know how
students.
many we had last year, or has
We
it?
had about the same. We
So-
had a little bit more, but we had some students graduate. So the highest we've ever had is like 36.
So it's not a
but-
trend that's been growing in this town?
No, this is my 10th year, and I started with 4. So it's been growing, but it has been the last few years, we've been between 27, 34. I have to say, my student population moves a lot. They're transient. They do come, they leave. I had a student who started when school started. A week later, she emailed me and said, I'm in Georgia. And now she's coming back tomorrow. Family situations happen. So, yeah, we've really never had more than like 36 or 38. But I see it increasing. I see that there are more people in our community who speak many languages. You know, that through the 30 that we were testing this past 2 weeks and next week. But these students are fluent in English at this point. But I think it's wonderful, but there's a lot of different languages being spoken.
Thank you.
So this was kind of a chart that the Department of Ed put together comparing what instruction for ELLs was like before the endorsement. Okay, voluntary mean the category classes, they didn't have to take them. They didn't have to take them, so it wasn't enforced. Now they get the endorsement. Yeah, so. The other thing that they've added is the licensure. There have to be 15 additional PDPs in sheltered English instruction, immersion, required for each renewal cycle. So that's something that
I was going to ask you about that.
And
Yes.
actually add to that, there's also 15 additional PDPs that folks need to obtain in special education as well for each renewal cycle. And that's anybody that holds an educator or administrator license.
Wait a minute, so is it up to the school system's going to have to provide that?
Well, we could do, that's part of it, but the state certainly does offer.
It's not necessarily up to us to do that. It's certainly an option for us to do that. In addition, different professional associations, be it, the professional associations for math teachers or for, English teachers or for superintendents or for business officials, they will probably take on the responsibility as well to offer something that would qualify for PDPs in SEI as well as special education to assist those who are members in doing that. But I know that we're already talking about that.
We have plans to provide our first, I guess, PDP mini-series coming up in June for folks to earn 15 PDPs to meet this requirement.
Do the teachers know this yet, that this is coming?
I think some do, and some don't. I don't know if
Yeah,
it's
I think-
universally.
Wow. This
Yeah,
is
it's still not,
incredible.
finalized, and, but the teachers who take the endorsement don't need these PDPs for their current cycle.
Okay.
They
What
won't
is
need
each
it.
renewal cycle, the 5 years?
It's 5 years.
Talking the 5 years of licensure.
So that will
Okay.
cover it. They get
Okay.
67.5 PDPs for the full course, isn't it? Something like that? Yeah, so they get quite a few PDPs. And they're allowing core academic teachers to roll over those PDPs if there's extra to the next cycle, which I guess they normally never do, but they're letting them if they have. So they're trying to encourage them
Soften
to.
the blow.
Yeah, soften the blow, exactly, I couldn't have said it any better.
Yeah.
So our course starts in spring, which is February 4th to them. So we start February 4th, and we meet 12 weeks, and we have, we're running it from 4 to 7 at the middle school library. And we have to do 4 to 7, that's not an option. We couldn't do it any earlier than 4.
There are courses that are beginning in a week or two.
Yes, beginning of
elsewhere.
October. We have 2 or 3 teachers taking fall courses.
And several administrators.
Several administrators taking, that's right, they're starting, that's right.
Are you able to go somewhere else? Because I was told that there were
Yes.
openings in Medford. So that if you heard about them through the state.
Oh, yes,
5 people
definitely. I'm
could-
sorry, I thought you meant me personally. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't want to go to Medford. No, yes, teachers can, when they go to register, I tell them, go to register. If you don't register, go and look at all the classes available, all the courses. And they can go any place that they can find a spot. That's, honestly, some teachers didn't want to do Wilmington because it was 4 to 7. They wanted to be closer to home when they finished their course.
Well, I think the other part is we have a really young staff, and a lot of them have children, young children.
I know.
And to get a babysitter, most of their husbands are probably not home, or wives, and to have a babysitter from 4 to 7, I just personally think the whole thing's outrageous, the way it's being set up, but
It
that's
is,
just me.
I know. And they'll allow hardships, but very rarely, and you still eventually have to get the endorsement, So we've had a few teachers have to use a hardship if something happened. The other thing this year is they're being extremely strict. You cannot miss any classes. None.
Wow. That's good. I mean, I know you need it, but wow.
They will allow, if you can't make some for an emergency, they'll let you take that same course in a neighboring district, as long as, it's coordinated with the instructors, because they do know things happen and sometimes, but they won't pass you. You'll have to take the course again.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions? You said that the unified arts teachers don't have to do this yet, but does that mean definitely they're going to have to do it at some point? Is that what the state is saying, or they're not, probably not?
They're not saying right now. They're not saying. I know they can't take it during a cohort year. If they want to pay for themselves to take it. And some unified arts teachers probably have licenses that are core academic. They will, but you're supposed to have, the idea is you're supposed to have an ELL student in your class, so the strategies you learn, you apply, and so that's been why they've been very picky about it.
And I read somewhere, if the children come in, they're English speaking because their parents don't speak English at home, but they've spoken English since they've been born. I don't know how, but they're English speaking. They're still considered part of this, the children?
We have an assessment that we use to determine, and if they pass it, and this, we have students all the time who are born here, and their home language is not English, so they don't pass the assessment.
But they do speak English.
They speak
Yeah,
English.
but it
They
must be
speak English.
difficult.
Yeah. And those students usually aren't in our program very long. I mean, language is a great, it's just it's a process with a lot of positive influence. Where they'll catch right up. But yeah, we do have students. We have some students that don't speak any English, but very few we call them newcomers. We have very few of those.
I used to have students that did that and that were like that, and it was very difficult because the parents chose, apparently, not to learn English. And it was so difficult dealing with the parents, and our ESL program was so large. And then halfway through the year, they'd come into our classrooms, and quite frankly, I would have liked to know ways to deal with their learning, because it was very difficult to get through to the kids and to understand. We weren't trained at all on how to do it. So the actual premise, I think, it's wonderful. But the lack of flexibility in how the teachers are supposed to gain this, I think is terrible. So that's all. Sorry. But thank goodness we have them.
I will say one thing that I have heard from those who have taken the course is that what they're being taught are just excellent strategies for good instruction, and who can't benefit from that. So I think
Absolutely.
even though it is quite a commitment, they come out of those courses feeling enriched by the experience. Yes, but the restrictive nature of it is certainly a challenge.
It is. And we tell them that, like you had mentioned, that the strategies are great for all students, but our ELL students need them. They really need them. If it's an academic language, they need to have the reading, writing, listening, speaking. I mean, they do need it. So I thought the content I like the content of the course. It is long, though. It is long. It's a grad level course. It's, They need a 70 to pass it, by the way. Which,
Oh, they have tests and everything?
they have papers, they have assignments. They have a
So it's
presentation,
really
they have a
a grad
capstone,
course.
but they need to, and I had no problems when I taught it I've had no one do poorly at all. And
hopefully
they worked really hard. I was really impressed. They put a lot, everyone put a lot of effort into it. So it was, yeah.
I think sometimes too, when you see that it's probably going to change their classrooms much for the better. And so when they see that happen, and I'm sure that gives you the incentive to keep going for more. And
Right, and they have such wonderful knowledge, these teachers, so they have a lot of background they're bringing, they have a lot to offer. So I haven't had any negative comments on the content. Sometimes I've heard from other courses, not mine, but I haven't had any negative, once it's done. We had a tough time this year too, because we had, the weather wasn't so great, so we had to work around that a little bit, but we have to put snow days into this, that's why it's such a long process.
Is there any other? That's it. Thank you so much, that was wonderful to have.
If you don't mind, I just had a quick question. So you were talking about there were two components of the ELL education. I understand the first one, which is language development, but the second one is sheltered English.
Immersion, that's what their classroom teachers, when their classroom teachers are working with them, teaching them content like math or science. Okay, so they, in order to reach the ELL students and tap into what they know, they have to have certain strategies, and that's what they're taught in the course. So they become SEI teachers.
Okay, so the SEI teachers just like teach them stuff like math.
Well, they're regular classroom teachers or core academic, but they come along, they have strategies now so they can work, they have the knowledge to work with ELL students. That's what that's what we want our program to look like. They have two parts. My part, and then the classroom teacher has his knowledge to teach the content and the strategies to reach all the students.
So does that occur in like a regular classroom?
Yes, SEI is in the, yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I ask you? Oh, I'm sorry. I sent it to Mary, just a quick question. In that realm where we have both ELL and special needs, how, I know there may be an elaboration to it. How does that work, and how do we handle that now, and is there?
Yeah, we have about 5 students right now that are on IEPs and CS, and it's I have to say it gets tricky. The Office of Language Acquisition, so at DESE, the ELL people, there's a very specific protocol you follow to exit a student out of ELL. Mm-hmm. Part of that is that they can pass the assessment, the access, with a certain score. What happens, though, quite often with our students who have learning disabilities is they can't pass it. But quite often when we pick up students, we don't know for sure if it's quite a learning disability yet or just a language, because there's always another language at home. We've never had a student who has no other language at home other than English in our program. So we have to work with special ed. Department of Ed is now trying to figure out a way of exiting these students because they tend to stay in our program a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. We're just doing the best we can. Okay. We work with their teachers, and so we're not duplicating the same thing in speech. So we're both doing it if we're doing language. But yeah, it is something that we're aware of. Okay. We have 5 students now. I think 2 of them are going to be leaving the program next year, but they've been with us for 4 years. So it is something that it is the ultimate question: is it really language proficiency or is it special needs? It's still difficult, but it's the topic of lots of discussion. So I think it is being addressed.
Right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, our next item of business is the district strategy for improvement.
Yes, we have this document. This is, I think, the 3rd time we're presenting it to you, but I did want to let you folks know that I think you're aware that I did distribute a survey, and we had close to 200 people who responded to the survey, and we asked specifically questions around whether they felt that the vision statement and the mission statement captured what people want to see from Wilmington Public Schools and expect our mission to be, and also gave them the opportunity to let us know what they liked most, what they might want to see changed. I got some very helpful comments and did make some adjustments to both the vision statement and the mission statement. I wouldn't characterize them as being major adjustments, but they were good suggestions, and so I did incorporate those suggestions. In addition, part of the survey was to identify our core values, and this was done by giving them a list of the 20 or 25 core values that came out of the discussions during the entry plan process and allowed people to rate them on a Likert scale from least important to most important. We then just literally took the average of the scores to rank order, and these were the 4 that scored the highest based on the survey results. And we've just tried to kind of capture the definition of what we feel this would look like in our schools and our school community. Other than that, it remains the same. I did direct people to our website if they were interested in seeing the full copy of it, and obviously to get if they wanted to give feedback, welcome that as well. I haven't gotten too much feedback, with the exception of maybe how are you really going to get all this done in 3 years, but we're committed, or we're going to be committed.
Excellent. Do we have any questions or comments? I think we've pretty much done this. I would accept a motion to adopt the Wilmington Public Schools Strategy for Improvement of Student Outcomes 2015 to 2018. Mrs. Bosch. So moved. Do you have a second? Mrs. Carroll. Thank you. All those in favor? Unanimous, Kim. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one is, we'll take them all up, the 4 policy changes. Other policies? Yeah, okay.
On the use of the school facilities, what is the process of renting them if somebody wanted to come in and rent them from us? Like, say, the auditorium, the Wilmington High School auditorium, or the football field, the turf field.
Yeah.
What is the process?
I'll actually turn that over to Mr. Ruggiero. He spent a good deal of time over the past months developing a document, regulations or procedures document based on the revised policy to be adopted. So I'll let him address that.
They would contact first of all the documents will be on our website. There's a permit facility request form, if you will. So a permit has to be requested, documentation filled out, and then based on who wants what and the availability and so forth, they get a permit for the use of the facility. So that would be for any of the facilities in the town.
So that document would go to you, Paul?
It goes to the Transportation Facilities Coordinator, Sharon Dennett.
Oh, yeah.
She does the permits as well.
Oh, okay.
I have a quick question on that as well, on the school facilities policy. As you're creating that document, how's it, I mean, is there going to be any, I guess, conflict, let's say, if there's, as far as the times, if there's a team practicing, for example, and somebody wants to use the track, if the basketball team's practicing, for that matter, is that going to be an issue?
Yeah, there's always, schools have priority at all times for the use of any facilities. One of the things that we mentioned was the indoor walking track. That will be available to the community. The school will be open from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Monday through Friday when school is in session. There's a registration form for that. In the winter, there's going to be teams practicing and so forth, but the walking track will be available. They'll be directed on how to get to the walking track and so forth. So, but as far as other facilities, schools always have top priority for the, whatever, if an athletic event's going on, a performance or whatever. The schools always have that.
So the track will be open while they're having practices in there? Is that what?
Because, yeah, they won't be in contact with any of the students because the students will be on the gym. To get to the track, they'll be able to get to the track.
Other questions? Okay. I think we'll take, it's the one with the 4 of them.
We just individual motions.
Yeah. Okay.
I just wanted to note too on the motions, because it is repeated in each one of them, that the school committee obviously has the right to make a decision to adopt a policy, but where it does have an impact potentially on employees in bargaining units, there is an obligation to bargain the impact. So we've just included language noting that as part of the adoption process, so that we acknowledge that we do understand and do intend to meet our bargaining obligations with the associations impacted.
Okay. Did everyone understand that? You get that? Yeah, okay. All right, the first one would be, I'd take a motion to adopt the physical restraint of students policy JKAA. Adoption and implementation of this policy is subject to any bargaining obligation that the committee may have. Okay, Mrs. Bonish?
So moved.
Second, Mrs. Carroll. All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Second, we'd move to adopt the acceptable use policy, IJNDB. Adoption and implementation of this policy is subject to any bargaining obligations that the committee may have. Mrs. Carroll? So moved. Okay, second, Mrs. Broussard. All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Third, move to adopt the social media policy, IJNDD. Adoption and implementation of this policy is subject to any bargaining obligations that the committee may have. Mr. Bjork?
I'll offer that as a motion.
Second, Mrs. Burns. All those in favor? Unanimous. And the last one, move to adopt the community use of school facilities policy, KF. Mrs. Burns? So moved. And second, Mr. Bjork. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Whoa. All right, let me see. Our next item of business would be the personnel report.
Yes, and I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Ruggiero, who has provided a personnel report for 2015-16 in your packet.
Thank you. In your packet, you have a personnel report. It shows the category, teachers, nurses, so forth. The staff member who left, or the staff member who was newly hired, what school, what grade or subject they teach, the date of the hire, and which staff member that person is replacing.
Question.
Yes,
Mr. Ruggiero, any of the personnel that have left, any retirements?
Yeah, that would be included in here,
Okay.
retirements.
So right now, do we have any open positions that we haven't been able to fill?
We have open positions, not so much because we haven't been able to fill them, but just because of the timeline. So, for example, Mr. Monaco left on September 18th. We're actually intending not to fill that position, and instead have created some stipended positions to provide leadership at the various grade levels. Similarly, I know Mr. Bradley, John Bradley, I think that OIT is very close to finding someone. They've already gone through the interview process. So we're either very close to filling these or else have made the decision not to fill.
Any other questions? It seems like a lot of people, but you do a great job. This happens every year, and in the summertime, you do a great job hiring new people. Because that's a lot of people to have to transition out, yes. Okay. All right, thank you very much. Our next would be the enrollment report.
Yes, and this has been updated since the last school committee meeting, although there really hasn't been any significant change. We just track it at the beginning of the year. The official enrollment in terms of submission to DESE is as of October 1st. So you can see our total enrollment for this year is 3,447 versus last year 3,511. And as I mentioned last time, we have fairly equal enrollment populations at the middle school and the high school this year. They only differ by 4 students.
Which is great, because then that means they're all going to the high school, they're not going to different schools, right? We're keeping our students in town.
We still did have a drop of 51 students from last year in terms of the high school. Some of it is difference in the class, the size of the classes. Last year's graduating class was significantly larger than this year's senior class, but we did, and we haven't completed the schools attending children. That report baffles me, the title of it, but that report yet, but that would tell us exactly where our students that are no longer here in Wilmington have gone.
Will we get that information?
We can provide that for you.
Oh, great, thank you.
I think it's interesting also how the 6th grade and 7th grade numbers are up into the 300.
Yeah, this is obviously sort of a somewhat of a temporary blip, and I think, again, the 9th grade class and the 12th grade class are fairly low compared to historical trends, but you can see the 6th and 7th grades are high, so those students will eventually end up here at the high school, so you'll see a little blip, as you've seen with kindergarten this year, where we had 64 additional K students this year versus last year.
Does anyone have any other comments or questions? No?
I have a quick question.
Yes, Mrs. Bosch.
What is grade 13? Is it?
Oh,
It's when they're
senior state.
This is
over
0,
18,
but-
they're supposed to
We
graduate.
don't have
Top secret.
What I expected, right?
It's 0 anyway, but I was just
They
wondering.
have to stay here till
They grad
21, so
students.
it's from 18 to
So
21.
tracking it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so. Okay, and then the letter of support for the Lahey Clinic mini grant.
Yes, and I apologize, I intended to bring copies, but I have one here, a clean copy for you to sign, so if it's all right, I'll just read through what I had written for the school committee to sign as a letter that the chair and I have worked on this letter. So this is addressed to Ms. Snyder at Lahey Clinic. At its meeting on September 23rd, 2015, the Wilmington School Committee voted unanimously to enthusiastically support the superintendent's application for a Lahey Hospital and Medical Center mini grant. Over the past year, through her entry plan process, the superintendent identified the need to address student mental health as a priority for our district. In response to these concerns, the school committee identified behavioral health as a district goal last year. We're pleased with the superintendent's efforts in this area, most notably the creation and work of the district's behavioral health task force last year under the leadership of the superintendent. As a school committee, we understand the importance of providing both academic and non-academic supports to students. We are pleased that the new strategy for improvement of student outcomes developed by our superintendent and her leadership team includes, as one of 4 strategic objectives, the creation of safe and supportive school environments. One of the 3 strategic priorities within this particular objective is to address and support students' social, emotional, and behavioral health. One of the action items in this 3-year plan is to provide mental health first aid training to staff, parents, and community members. We were so pleased to learn of the funding opportunity that you offer, as it's so closely aligned to and supportive of our district's strategic plan. We recognize that a precursor to academic success is a student's readiness to learn. Addressing and supporting students' behavioral and mental health needs is essential to this readiness and ability to learn. We also recognize the importance of strong family and community engagement around this effort and are excited about the collaborative approach outlined in the superintendent's proposal. We offer our full support of this initiative and have complete confidence that she and her staff, in collaboration with our town staff, will achieve the objectives outlined in the grant proposal. We're grateful for the opportunity to apply for this grant and thank you for your consideration. So I took many liberties in advance of the vote, I realize, in drafting this letter, but I know you, when I mentioned it at the during the superintendent's report at the last meeting, there was enthusiastic response. So again, just to remind folks, it's a $10,000 grant that we've applied for, and we would use it to train 3 staff members, 2 in the school department, 1 in the health department, to become certified instructors in mental health first aid, and then to use that model to train our staff, our community, our parents in the mental health first aid program, which, as I mentioned before, is a evidence-based program that is on the registry of programs through the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration at the federal government level.
Great, thank you.
Oh, that's, oh, thank you. So, anyway, we're
And we
looking
just need to
for,
sign one.
we'll just need to sign, yeah.
All right,
we'll make a
first we're
copy
going
of
to
it.
take a motion. Entertain a motion to sign the letter of support for the Lahey Clinic mini grant. Mrs. Broussard.
I'll make a motion to sign the letter of support for the Lahey Clinic mini grant.
Second, Mr. Mullis. All those in favor? Okay, unanimous. Good, thank you.
Thank you. So we'll leave this here, and as folks are exiting, just since we have you all, just be sure to give us your John Hancock. You can pass that on.
I see this is what the selectmen do, they sign them right at the there. We can sign that one. Okay, our next item would be public comment. No public comment. Other reports. I just want to say that the Superintendent's District Advisory Council was looking for a school committee person, and Mrs. Broussard had asked about that, so I'm going to appoint her to the district council as our representative. So, Mrs. Broussard, that will be for you. And do we have correspondence tonight?
Peggy, if I can just,
I'm sorry,
can I say
yes.
something? I just wanted to say that I thought the ceremony, the time capsule opening ceremony, and the 9/11 memorial ceremony were outstanding. I appreciated the program that was put together, and I think Mrs. Lahey did a wonderful job of being inclusive and bringing the community together for that whole program, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. That's very good. And you reminded me of something I wanted to say. The other night, the CPAC had their first meeting, and they had their, what's that called? Basic Rights. It was a Basic Rights workshop. The speaker is excellent. It's the same one she was here last year and the year before. I think they asked for her, Beth, because she's so good. The time flies by, and she's talking, and you're like, wow, this is interesting, and very good to know. I hope that the people who have special needs children in the school system would really benefit by watching what they're doing. And they have a parent caregiver support group, a new group that they've started, and they have meetings at Panera Bread in the back conference room, and I think this is on our website.
I would imagine so. The CPAC does have a page on our website.
And they also have a list of when their business meetings are and when their workshops will be. And so the information is so invaluable, I would think, for parents who could use it. So I just want to encourage people to watch out for that. That was really good. Do we have anything else?
One correspondence.
Yep, okay.
We received a letter dated September 14th. Dear Mrs. Kane, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 150E, and the collective bargaining agreement between the Educational Assistance Association and the Wilmington School Committee, and in accordance with Article 1, Section 3 of the agreement, please consider this notice of the association's intent to commence bargaining a successor agreement. Please contact me to determine a bargaining schedule. Sincerely, Jane Woods, President.
Thank you, that's good. Does anybody, could I ask first how many we're going to have? How many people's contracts are up, do we know?
Just the ed assistants.
Oh, just the ed
Correct.
assistants,
Just the ed
okay.
assistants this year.
That's good to know if anyone wants to do this. Who is there anybody who would like to be on it, or would you like to think about it and tell us at the next meeting?
I'll be happy to be on that.
You do it?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Bjork. Anybody else want to be a second person with him?
Conflict of interest in me.
The what?
It would be a conflict of interest.
Oh, yes, I know. That's good. Actually, if no one else does, I can be the second person with you. Unless someone else, okay. Steve, okay. Good, thank you.
In that case, I rescind my offer.
We have fun. We have future meeting dates and agenda items, October 7th and October 21st. We've changed those dates, so these are the new dates that we'll be having. And then the next thing is we were going to be going into executive session, but the person we were going to have a discussion with has chosen to exercise her rights that this would be held in public session. So we're going to switch gears here, and I'd like to just kind of open up what's happening. What's occurred was that in early September, it came to my attention that a grant had come to the superintendent through DESE, which no one expected and of which no one in the superintendent's office was aware. As more information was gleaned, the officers of the school committee felt that a number of ethical issues surrounding the grant needed to be discussed with the entire committee. This is a quote. Specifically, it has been reported that during the last budget cycle at the state level, Mrs. Burns advocated for state funds in the form of an earmark to compensate an individual who has provided placement services for Wilmington High School students in the past. Upon learning that the district may be eligible for the funds, it was determined that nobody in the school district or on the school committee was aware that she had been advocating on behalf of this individual. I have afforded Mrs. Burns with a variety of ways to speak with us, which would have kept the member private among the committee members. Tonight's executive session was one of the options. Not one of your fellow committee members, MJ, wants to have this discussion in public. However, at your insistence, we are willing to proceed. Although we do not agree with this decision, we respect that it is your right to request a public session. And there are a couple of basic issues that we want to get to, but before we do that, and I'm not sure if you wanted to make a statement first.
If you don't mind.
No, but before we do that, I would just like to add to the information so we'll know what was of concern to us is I'm going to ask the superintendent to explain what happened when this grant information came to the Roman House.
We were notified, I think you mentioned a time period, we were notified from, actually it was Mr. Ruggiero that received, I think, the initial correspondence from DESE that a grant had, that we had been awarded a grant through the state budget process in the amount of $25,000. We asked what the intent of the grant was or how the funding came to be placed in the budget and then through DESE given to us as a grant, and it was mentioned something to the effect of it's for community service, Wilmington Wildcat Community Service Program. So that's what we were for. We actually contacted the high school, Mr. Mahoney, Mr. Phillips, Ms. Peters. They too were unaware of how this money had come to be placed into the budget and given to Wilmington Public Schools. So our plan was to take the information to the committee, as I mentioned in the superintendent's report last week, and ask, because the direction we were given was, we have to submit an application essentially as long as we use the funds for some sort of community service-based initiative, that would be in keeping with the intent of the grant as DESE explained it. So we figured we would get some feedback and input from the committee as to what you might be interested in seeing funded, and alternatively we had some ideas as well around that.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Burns.
Thank you very much. I'd like to read just the following into the record, please. And I'm going to take deep breaths because it's. I received. I'm reciting. What I'm reading into the record is a sequence of events. Just for the record, I received from the chair a defective notice of executive session on September 4th, 2015, calling into question a conversation I had with with Representative Misselli about possible funding for an organization that provides support to Wilmington students. The chair seemed to raise two concerns: that I advocated for funding in the form of an earmark, and that I failed to disclose to the representative that I was acting on my own behalf and not on behalf of, at the request of, or with the authorization from the Wilmington School Committee or School District. On September 8th, 2015, I had a conversation with the chair in the morning about her concerns. She had sent me an email later in the day with a list of questions which, if answered, would seem to address her concerns. On September 9th, the executive session was canceled that was originally scheduled for that meeting. I fully answered the questions posed by the chair and sent them to all members of this committee on September 11th, 2015. When I sent the email, I invited the chair and other members of the committee to send me additional questions if they still had outstanding concerns. As of today, I've never received any response from the chair or other members of this committee. Therefore, I was led to believe I fully addressed the concerns. Without any further communication from the chair, I received another notice of executive session on September 14th, 2015. The notice referenced a complaint that called into question the same activity as the first notice. On September 22nd, I sent the chair and copied the other members of this committee my formal objection to an executive session, which I am entitled to do pursuant to Mass General Law C-30A. Instead, I asked that this matter be placed on the agenda of the open session. In that email, I also attached a copy of a letter I will now read into the record from Representative Misselli. Dear Mrs. Kane, it has come to my attention that you have issued a complaint against a fellow Wilmington School Committee member, M.J. Burns, because you believe she, 1, advocated for state funds in the form of an earmark, and 2, failed to disclose to me that she was acting on her own and not on behalf of, at the request of, or with authorization from the Wilmington School Committee or School District when requesting that I explore funding opportunities for the Wildcat Community Service Program. Excuse me. I wish to make abundantly clear, 1, Mrs. Burns did not advocate for funding in the form of an earmark. We never discussed a specific source of funding for the Wildcat Community Service Project. And 2, Mrs. Burns disclosed to me that she was acting on her own and not on behalf of, at the request of, or with authorization from the Wilmington School Committee or School District when requesting that I explore funding opportunities for the Wildcat Community Service Project. I sincerely hope this addresses the entire committee's concerns and ends any and all confusion about Mrs. Burns' activity with my office and myself. Sincerely, Jim Misselli. I have nothing further to add, except I am disappointed in how this matter was needlessly elevated and that a representative had to be called upon to corroborate the facts. Again, I invite the chair and other members of this committee to send me additional questions in writing if they still have outstanding concerns. I prefer to receive the questions in writing so I may prepare a reply with the greatest of accuracy. Thank you.
Mr. Bjork, did you have something to?
Well, so you're not prepared to address the any questions at this point?
I am very limited as to, I've been counseled because of the nature of the complaint. I've been advised that I have no problem answering questions, but that I've been advised that they should come in writing so that there's no misinterpretation or manipulation of my intent into what I say.
I don't know how we further.
I just,
Mrs. Brissett.
We're bringing this issue forward not to criticize you, not to punish you. I just want to understand fully how this all transpired. I know you did try to put it in writing. I want to talk about it. And I think as a committee, it's our right also to talk to each other and work this out as a group and not have to rise it to the level that it's been risen to.
That's correct.
And we tried to do that a couple of weeks ago, and I don't feel like it's been resolved, even by reading your responses. I still have questions that I'd like to ask.
Please do.
Why don't we start at the beginning? What was the process that you got involved where it sounded like you were approached by a community member who was seeking some funding, but can you walk us through how that all took place and how you ended up in front of Representative Misselli?
Yep. I happened to get involved originally when the director of the Wildcat Community Service Program approached me in February of 2015 about her need to secure additional resources to support the program. The Wildcat Community Service Program provides support services to Wilmington students who are working towards satisfying their community service obligations in order to graduate, but also benefits the many community organizations within our town community through this service that allows them to fundraise and to run their programs. The director told me that she had spoken to the superintendent and was informed that the school department did not have additional funding to support the program. On or about February 17th, I spoke with after being approached, I spoke with Superintendent Lahey, who reiterated the conversation she had with the director of the program, and at that point, I do remember stating that I was going to see what else I might be able to do, if there was anything else I could do. And you said, best of luck. I have an email to the director referencing that, and that's where I got that date. Our representative, I spoke with the director about it, and we decided, well, let's see if there's any state funding. So at that point, a representative was approached when I wrote him a letter on February 23rd, 2015, to inquire whether there might be state funding available to support the Wildcat Community Service Program. I attended a meeting in March with the representative and the director of the program to discuss the funding request. At that meeting, I made it clear to the representative that I was not acting on behalf of or at the request of or with authorization from this committee or school district. That's how it evolved.
Okay. Can I ask a follow-up question?
Please.
Did the director of the Wilmington Community Service Project approach you as a school committee member or as a private citizen? And then even though you identified to the representative and to that individual that you weren't representing the school committee, I guess I don't see the difference. If you were approached as a school committee member, even by the virtue of you making that introduction, you're helping it along. You're helping that process. Well, indirectly advocating is how I would view it.
Well, I've got something here, just because I'm just trying to make this easy so I don't. On the MASC website, I went looking because there's a clarification as to what, as public officials, we hold.
Yeah.
Whether we choose to exercise it or not. I happened to find an excerpt that speaks, it was the role of the chair, but I think it speaks kind of eloquently to what I was looking for. Under Servant of the Assembly, the role and responsibilities of the school committee chair, page 6 of it, on the MASC website, it states, the school committee is obligated to represent the entire district. This means looking out for the interests of every part of a city or town and every community within a regional district. Special interest constituencies are important, but it is up to the chair to remind colleagues that they should respond to their best judgment based on the greater good. So although I sit as a school committee chair, I think it's understood by all, no matter what whether we were a parent or anything else, we'll always be seen as a school committee member in our community. So I can't really answer that question effectively or efficiently. And if you'd like, I could go back and be happy to write you up something. I'm being a little going against my counsel's advice, but I do want to try to clear this up and rectify this.
Oh, I think we all do.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us want this to continue further. This is troubling to me. The other piece that I find troubling is that none of us knew. We didn't know, so we weren't acting as a committee. You were acting as an individual.
I was, exactly, as I understand, and I've been told, is my seat. We are individual public officials. Mm-hmm. We meet together as a board, but because this wasn't a school committee or school board or school district program, I exercised my seat to help a community program within our community, and that's how I addressed it. I didn't know, and we've never had, and I've never been a part of a discussion where, in that manner, that I was expected to. I wasn't intended to hide anything. I just didn't know. I was not familiar. It was never discussed that I was obligated to. I wasn't trying to hide it. I just didn't know I had the obligation to, since it didn't directly impact the school committee and the district.
Can I add a little here? Okay, first of all, as I told you the last time, when, at the last meeting, I guess I'm sitting here thinking, all right, all of a sudden now it's about me as the chair, and I resent that.
I apologize,
So I
that's
just am
not what my
going to
intent.
put that out there. I did in fact tell you, I'm going to go back to where you started, I did in fact say to you at the last meeting that we have two ways to go. It was my fault we couldn't have the executive session because I didn't count the holiday in the 48 hours. That was totally my fault. So I told you that we had two choices. One based on an email you had written saying that you'd like to talk to Mary, myself, and you, and I added Steve to that list so that we made sure we had like a, it didn't seem like we thought we were impartial at that point. So anyway, you chose not to do that. You also told me that night that you were going to write answers to my, I gave you, the list that I gave you had to do with what we would talk about if we went into the executive session and how we would proceed. You wanted to know what was going to be covered. That was the list I gave you. When it came down to our discussion at the end of our school committee meeting, I said to you, no, we don't want it in writing. The committee wants to have a discussion. And the bottom line is, we don't want your answers in writing, and I need you to tell me by Friday whether we're going to meet or we're going to go back to executive session. I never heard from you verbally, but you sent in a copy to everybody of the answers to those questions, which weren't really questions, they were the topics we were going to do, that were going to be in the discussion. So I just wanted to clarify that. The other thing is, when you said about telling Representative Maselli, when you sat down with him, you said in the same paragraph that you had sent him a letter previous to that questioning the funds.
No.
Questioning whether there were funds for that project.
No, I did not.
That-
I said I wrote
let me
it,
find
I've
this.
got the letter right here, if you'd like to see it.
I'm just, well, my
No.
question on that is, in the letter, you didn't say that you weren't representing the school committee. In that letter, you said you were asking for if there was funding available.
And that, my opening sentence says, "I am writing to you today
it's
with
down
hopes
the
to be
bottom.
able to arrange a meeting to discuss possible funding for the Wildcat Community Service Program." That's my first sentence of the letter.
But what you don't get, MJ, and what we're thinking is, here is the problem for me. You have a relationship with Representative Maselli because you are our liaison to our state reps.
I'm also a constituent, so I've known him prior to be sitting in this seat.
Okay. Fine. I'm not going to
I
argue that
understand.
point with you. I'm going to say to you that even maybe he's well aware of who you are. That's what I'm going to say. And for us, it clouds the waters, because if we wanted a $25,000, we might want it for something that's in our list of priorities. So I'm going to go to the next part of this, is the fact that this program that you were advocating money for, what was that money supposed to be for? What in the program? How was she going to use this in the program?
It was for the viability, its overhead operations.
Was it anything going to be for paying her?
You know, something, that was, it looked into, and up to the point where I recused myself, when I also learned on September 1st, where the situation had, with the grant and such, I recused myself. Up to that point, she had asked questions, a variety of different questions to Representative Maselli, with regards to what she needs to be aware of. As to what the answer is, I was never a part of that answer, so I don't know. That may be, I can't speak for her, but it again, as Superintendent Lahey gave me a whole education on public monies and things of that sort at our discussion, where I too found out that that grant, when I first became aware of where the grant was, I don't know, and I can't speak for that, because I don't know if that was ever answered.
I feel badly about that though, MJ, because it says to me that you didn't get all the information about the grant before you were helping to advocate it as a possibility.
It wasn't, the thing is, I didn't advocate for a grant. I talked to Representative Maselli, and that was about state funding, and that was it, and he took it and he created a bill. And he said he bundled it with a variety of other different bills. And that's all I knew about it until I heard from, I had a conversation with Superintendent Lahey on September 1st. That was the last I heard about it. I knew nothing about it. I knew nothing about the grant.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, please.
The letter that Representative Maselli wrote, and I wrote it down here, but this is where I'm confused. That letter stated that you did not advocate or that you advocated for funding?
I did not advocate on the behalf of the school district or the school committee.
So what are we arguing about?
Well, actually, this is, I think, the crux of it, is that were you aware that this person is an employee of the school system?
No.
You didn't know that she worked for the school system?
No, because I know her through this program, and as I'm a CCD teacher at St. Thomas, and she's also an employee at St. Thomas. And it wasn't, as I said, she came to me, approached me about the program. That's all we focused on.
I think I don't know that you can so easily put on and take off the school committee hat. That's my personal opinion.
I do,
Mrs. Gill.
when I go to IEP meetings, I tell them straight out, I am here for my child, I'm here as a
That's for your
parent.
child, yeah.
Do not put me as the school committee, do not ask me to do a school committee. Everything is said here, it stays here, because I am a parent. And when I sign my name, I write parent.
You're advocating for a child as opposed to
Right.
state funds
But I'm
for a
taking off my
program
school committee
for your child.
for my child.
But the argument is whether you can argue as a school committee or as an individual, not
Right.
whether it's for your child or not. I mean, I have to,
She was doing it for her child. Maybe her child gets this funding, helps out with, the Wildcat project. Who knows?
The other thing I would.
You know what I mean? I'm not,
I just think that when we do our ethics test online every year, this situation specifically comes up in that every time we do it.
I'm a little, and that's maybe where my, if you pointed out exactly what it was, which I've been asking, because I'm not sure where that hiccup is.
She's a Wilmington school employee. That's something that I think maybe if you were.
But this is and this is where I think I'm gray, and that's where I think I'm tripping on. I didn't know that first off. This is a separate program that she independently runs, separate of her responsibilities to the school that she's done for the past 5 years. So that's what she doesn't do it as a school employee, she does it as the director of the program. So that's where I'm maybe that's where that gray area is, and if that's where that, one of the gray areas is, I'd like to research that further. I mean, I wasn't aware of it, but I'm understanding from what I've been told and when I've researched that although we're school committee members, we're also public officials in this community, and although we're not, that we can also advocate within our community for things. It doesn't necessarily all have to be a school, and that's what I'm trying to understand, and I may not be expressing it as well in my words. So, and that's where I think that crutch comes on.
I think for some of us, I'll say, the fact of speaking to a person who's our rep, and there's so many things, there's so many times that you have to go to a representative, and to bring it for something that, it was my understanding, and I'm not sure how this information came about, but that basically the person was looking for, and I think because she had asked other community groups and they turned her down, but she had said it was to pay her, that she had volunteered for all these years, and that she felt it was time she was paid and she needed a new computer.
Yeah, your information is incorrect.
So,
I think they think it's not. I honestly,
right.
only because of I'm part of some organizations in town where if it wasn't for the program, they wouldn't be operating. I can't speak to it, but that piece, but I'd just say this, if it was $25,000 and there's not a salary involved, and she's looking to purchase a computer, I don't know where the other money's Well, I
going
can't
to.
discuss that because that's not a part of this complaint. It's nothing that I can speak to or.
But the part is, then it shows me even more so that you didn't have all the facts about the program, or about what it was going to be used for. when you were asking for an amount, did you ask for an amount, or did you just say?
We did. We
any
didn't ask
money?
for the amount he put it in for, but we did ask for a much lesser amount.
Okay. Go ahead, Manny, and then Julie.
I was supplied with, and excuse me for interrupting, Mr. Meals, I apologize. I was supplied with, at the initial visit, leading up to that first visit, Representative Maselli, the director did supply surveys, parent surveys, all our business records and information with regards to that program. I don't have it with me, and I can't recall it right now at the top of my head, but it was a well set up. It wasn't a loosey-goosey situation. That's all I can speak to, but I just want to let you know.
Go ahead.
Excuse me for interrupting.
I guess what's troubling me, and I'm going to be totally honest
Please.
with you, is that it would be different to me if you were approached by a citizen who said, geez, I'm doing this for the community, this is a great benefit for our students, can you give me a resource to go to? And you say, great, here's a couple of resources, here's a couple of phone numbers that you can try, and that's where it ended for you, whether you're a private citizen or a school committee member. I have a trouble that you are physically present in the office.
It is.
Because I think it gets a little gray about whether you were advocating or whether you were just there for support of a citizen.
I facilitated a meeting between her. I did speak to her because I'm familiar with the program and my experience with the program, with the organizations. I've supplied you a letter from Representative Maselli. I've responded to the questions. I don't know what you're looking for in that sense. Our seat does allow for us to do that. I didn't go to the legislator and advocate on the floor. That was all Representative Maselli, which was appreciated him going to bat for this program. But I'm not benefiting from this in any way at all.
I don't think that you are.
But I'm not doing anything that's outside the guidance of. And I think this is where there's some misunderstanding that I don't know how to clean it up, but I'd be happy to take away what questions need to be answered so I can thoughtfully put together a better response. And I've looked into it, that our seat, and if it's something in the community to be the greater good of the community, then we have that ability to do so, whether I sit as a school committee member or a constituent or another parent. I'm acting within my rights, but and from what I've been told, because I've seeked out where I could have gone wrong, and that's where that disconnect comes. We have that right and that ability as public officials to do so and to help out in our community, and that's all I was trying to do, is assist a program that I think is viable and important to a lot of the organizations. Try funding so it doesn't collapse, and that was basically what I did. I had nothing to do with an earmark. I had nothing to do with a grant. We asked Representative Maselli, and he took it from there. I mean, I don't know what else you want me to say. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't. I honestly don't.
Can you see where we would see some gray? Do you just at least see where we see gray area?
I'm not quite sure is the thing, Steve.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure. From what I've been told and I understand, I thought this was totally separate from the committee and the board because it's a community program.
I understand that at the time, but now that after all this discussion, all this back and forth, do you see where the concerns are? I mean, do you? And I think more than anything, that's why we really want to do this in private. We're not trying to censor you. We're not trying to punish you.
It shows the transparency of our board, and I think it's just as important that people see that we work together, regardless as to how difficult, and I appreciate that. It may not be the easiest conversation to have, and I'd be the first one to tell you, I'm the one, I couldn't certainly agree, but I think it was very necessary, and I do, no matter, but I want this addressed, and could you please, Steve, for the black and white thinker over to your left? Me.
Oh.
Because that's what I've asked for, and I haven't really found at what point does it become an ethics, and what law does it potentially press against?
We specifically cannot advocate for any monies for a school employee.
I wasn't, though. It was for a program. It was nothing, didn't talk about salary, didn't talk about anything like that. Those questions did come up, and as to whether
So those questions did come up, and salary was not included in her breakdown of $25,000.
Well, first of all, what we asked for a base. It wasn't a breakdown. Representative Maselli, it was my first time doing this first off. She was looking for funds along with that, because I believe it was the first time Wildcat Service Program had also seeked out possible state funding. So there was a barrage of questions that were posed to Representative Maselli. One of that was one of the questions as to how that was responded to. I do not know, because of the nature of the funding, being that it's public monies, and that the program has operated for the past 5 years on private grants. That changes it up. So there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, and I don't know if those questions have been answered yet or not.
I'd like to say one of the other issues for me is the communication issue. And I went through the handbook that we had worked so well on, you and Julie and I. And in our own handbook, it says communication is the centerpiece of effective school committee superintendent relationships. Harmonious and productive relationships between school committees and superintendents will flourish if two-way communication is established and maintained. In governance, we act only as a body as prescribed by law and not as individual members. The committee as a group presents and advocates the budget to the community. Don't spring any surprises on the committee. Members share pertinent information with each other to prevent surprises. Members understand the role of the individual part of the whole group. Both the committee and the superintendent operate on no surprises model, and we've always said that. Mm-hmm. And so whether you thought it was important to say it or not, it should have been said to at least the superintendent. I think you didn't realize that the grant would come through DESE to the superintendent's office.
I wasn't aware as to how that was going to be dispersed.
Yeah, and then when I happened to go in there that very day, and for them to get a phone call and have to say to DESE, what are you talking about? I mean, I'm imagining that's what they had to say, because they didn't know what it was.
Well, I had no idea.
So that makes us look bad with DESE when it shouldn't, and it makes us, I just find that really difficult. The other part is the grant process. You did have control over that.
I did not,
Jay.
I didn't, because I didn't know.
If you had told anyone and they would have said something to you, all you had to have done was tell.
Well, but I didn't know. Well, first off, again, I'll reiterate, I didn't, because I thought this was separate from this board and this district, because it was a community program. Please let me finish. I didn't know, I was under arm's length. I wasn't trying to hide it, but I didn't think it was incorporated as to how we govern, because it was separate from my duties with my members and such. Secondly, all I asked, how it was dispersed at the state level, I had no idea. I had no idea until I learned from Superintendent Lahey that went to the Department of Education. I didn't know. And I was just as surprised.
Can I just
Yes,
offer from my perspective? I think what Peggy references with respect to communication is potentially the ability to have a discussion about if the state was willing to put in its budget $25,000 in whatever form, earmark, grant, or whatever, that we would have had a discussion to have determined if that was the highest priority for which we would ask the state for $25,000. I can honestly say, as a superintendent, there are a lot of priorities that we have as a school district for which $25,000, mental health first aid being just one example, that I would have loved to have known that there was a possibility to sort of advocate for that and have that discussion. And I think if we had had that discussion ahead of time, then I might have been able to share some information with respect to the Wildcat Community Service Project, which we should all be aware is not, it's not an organization. It doesn't, have its own tax ID number or 501c3 status. I could share with you the conversation that I had with the director when I was approached about getting funding using funding from the district's budget, and what was shared with me at that time about how the funds that had previously been obtained by private grants were being expended, including a funding salary, for lack of compensation, for the individual for services provided. And I think I also would have probably encouraged us to have a conversation with the high school principal and the high school administration and the high school guidance staff as to what their feelings were with respect to this project and the value, for lack of a better term, of the project to the high school. So I think that's why the communication piece was important. So I just wanted to offer that, just in terms of communication and the value of communication.
And I concur with that, because I'd be honest with you, as I said, that the $25,000 was an amount that we did. Representative Minnesota was good to ask for more than what we anticipate had asked for. But that is something that I did take away from our conversation, because there are other things that you did disclose to me that we're waiting for funding. And that is something that I wanted to address, in the sense that and it's following our protocol that I've always followed about having that discussion, because there's a lot of initiatives that you've created and are just waiting to take off and springboard. That with the agreement of the board, and we do it following the protocol, have those discussions to see what we can do, and I'd be happy to go with the approval of the board to look into that mental health piece, or any other initiative that you find. But I think I would love that, just have that conversation, saying, hey, MJ, or to meet as a meeting to say, this is what I'd like to bring before the board, and go from there. I wouldn't mind. I was unawares, and maybe I didn't know enough to ask the question, but that's that's what I'm here for. But I sometimes, if I don't know enough to ask the question, then I would love to say, MJ, I was thinking about this. I would love to be approached. Can you, Peggy, and I sit down and let's discuss it, and then we'll bring it to the board and see what they say. I would love that. I would love that. I did something where I thought was separate, again, from this board and this district, because it's a program that's not affiliated with the schools. I thought I was acting separate from my responsibilities here as in my community, to help a community program, as I volunteer for others, programs in the area. It was separate. How it all rolled out and where the district got involved, I had no influence. That came Representative Misselli. And that's, I can only speak to up to the time that I found out where it stood, and that's when I recused myself from the whole situation, because now it became a conflict of interest, knowing that the money was there, and I did speak out again, speak for this program. So it was only with the best intent in helping our community out with this program that a lot of other organizations feed off of to help raise money.
Do you mind? I don't think anybody here thinks you did it with ill intent. I really don't.
No, but that was all my perspective as to.
But and again, that's why we wanted to have this conversation. It's not because we thought you were going about with ill intent. It's just that we thought there was a lot of gray area, so we wanted to discuss it.
And I just feel worried that I'm not sure you see the overall picture. And I think that's what worries me, that in the future, something similar might happen. And I really just need to encourage you that you need to let us know when you're doing anything that has anything to do with the school. I mean, the kids.
The community, too.
But the community, you say this is separate from the school, but she uses school students as this, it's the basis of her work.
They seek her out. She doesn't seek them out, and
But they are still the school students. And it's a program in the school. We have a policy that they'll do so many hours of community service. And so, I mean, it just screams of, it has to do with the school. And I personally just feel nervous that you don't really, I don't know if you still really understand.
I think I understand, but I think
What's-
I may, and this may be what it is, I think I may interpret it differently. That, yes, this program does connect students seeking community service hours with organizations in town. I see it kind of as not just student-oriented, but also it supports the other organizations in town that need these volunteers. When they call into one person and say, yep, I'll get, I need 10 volunteers, that's arranged, and that organization continues to fundraise. And a lot of those organizations give back to our district, and I think it's kind of like I looked at it as a revolving circle with our students. And it's not just high school students and middle school students and some adults I've seen sprinkle in there as to whether or not they're through that program specifically. But that's how I see it, because that's what I've observed it over the past 5 years.
Let's take that out of the mix completely and just think, all right, what is really the bottom line here is you should not, whether you're as long as you're on the school committee and you're seen to be a school committee person, whether you say, don't call me a school committee person right now because I'm this person or not, the bottom line here is you should not be advocating to our state rep or our reps, either Mr. Bruce Tarr or Representative Maselli, for money, separate from the rest of us all doing it or having decided at a meeting that we want to do that. And if you're our liaison at the time, then you would bring that forward. As you said, everything you brought before those letters and everything, you brought to us first, and then went
on behalf of the district
group
and the board.
And I think that's what we're trying to tell you, that we can't have each of us like going around and asking for money from people. And as Steve's trying to tell you, it's specifically laid out. It's not just hinted at. It's specifically laid out. And Julie, did you have?
Yeah, I think in terms of my understanding of things, I don't advocate to be a lawyer. I think of myself as a reasonable individual of average intelligence, and I'm sure social media will have a field day with that one. But again, Mr. Bjork referenced the conflict of interest training that we go through, and they take you through the scenarios and talk about how would this be viewed as a reasonable individual. When I first heard about the situation, I didn't have enough information myself, so I was looking for an opportunity to speak to you to get more information so I could make an analysis of my own as a reasonable individual. And I think all this is played out as a breakdown in communication. We talked a year ago at our retreat about our commitment to communicating with each other and working well as a team. And I feel like somewhere this is a perfect example. Something broke down and we didn't know what was going on. So then when we heard about it, I was like, what is going on? Did I miss something? What's the story here? I think I have a better understanding now in the past half hour that we've been talking about it of your viewpoint and what you were trying to do for a fellow community member, and that's great. But I would have...
Just a clarification, sorry.
Okay, but I would have liked to have that opportunity 6 weeks ago to have somebody bring it to our attention. Hey, we got this great program out there in the community that, okay, it's not a school program, but it affects our school students. Let's talk about this, and they have a need. Let's talk about it. All this year we've been talking about our priorities, and we went through the budget process. Never once did I hear about this program.
Well, it's separate from the school district, so you wouldn't hear about it in our budget.
Again, gray area, gray area.
All right, that's where that's something I will research further, clarify.
Gray area.
No, I see.
Where are they located?
In her house? I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Is it up from her house? She's not located in the schools.
No, she's not. No. I think it would be out of her own home.
That's a whole other, that program's a whole other issue, I think. Yeah. Does anyone do we all?
I just have one thing. So, like Steve said, no one thought that the intention, that you had any bad intention. I just think this whole discussion, we wanted to be constructive and even educational for us, because we want to know whether we're allowed to do those things, or, you know what I mean? So I know myself, I tried to put, you know, when I first found out about this, I tried to put myself in your position, and I think that if I were to have an idea like that, I would run it by Peggy or someone, just to make sure that even if it is a community program, you know, it does help out the kids. I would just run it by someone. That's all. And, you know, that would be my instinct. And so moving forward, you know, it just seems, you know, natural that should happen. That's all.
Did you mention earlier in your statement that you did run it by Peggy or the superintendent?
No,
Did I miss
had
you?
to just, because I was, when I was approached, the director stated she had a conversation, she was trying to find a home for the program, so it wouldn't fold. I said, all right, well, I'd like to, you know, I called Superintendent Lahey because I wanted to find out her thought, you know, what it was in the conversation, and I understood, because the school doesn't have the money to support a program, and it's understandable with regards to all the things that we face with the budget each year. And so, I mean, I said, look, I'm going to see what I could do. And it was like, at that time, there wasn't any decision as to where we were going to go. And I spoke to, you know, the director and I spoke. She said, well, would you help me talk to Representative Maselli? I said, sure.
So what was your role with Representative Maselli? Was it as a facilitator? Were you advocating for funds?
I asked for a meeting to discuss the Wildcat Community Program and funding. And then he called me back. He said, let's meet. And so we did. Met in March initially. And the director spoke to Representative Maselli. She gave all her business information that she'd given to me to him. And he said, okay, let me see what I can do. And it went from there. And from then till the overrides, you know, I just kept abreast, this is where it is, and that was it. I mean, after the
He kept you abreast.
Yeah, just saying this is where it's in the house.
And he was aware that you were not acting as a school committee member during that time?
Yes.
And you were not aware that these funds had something to do with the school budget?
No, that's something that transpired at the legislature and at the State House. We just asked for state funding. So as to how it all transpired, and then it got to DESE, and then now it becomes a form of a grant, which I learned, that was all discovered on September 2nd.
So I think what...
Can I just add, just the perspective of DESE, so people understand, is that there is no organization called the Wildcat Community Service Project.
Program.
Or, yeah, it's written in there as project.
Yeah.
There is no organization to which the funds could be granted. And so when they look at this and they looked at what it was for, what statement, and that it was to basically provide community service opportunities to students, they said, oh, this is a school initiative. This is a school-based issue, you know, so therefore the money should be going to the schools because this is obviously a school thing, and so they channeled it through DESE because they really had no other alternative. They couldn't turn it over to a program project that didn't have a tax ID number, wasn't like a 501c3, wasn't, you know, registered as a corporation or non-charitable organization with the Secretary of State's office. So they thought, all right, this money gets approved. It said, what do we do with it? And that seemed the most logical channel to get the funds to us.
So I think that the communication part is certainly something we, you know, that could have been done better, but I don't think it was any intent on your part to put yourself in a position where you would act as a school committee member through that point. But if you didn't know that that's the way it was going to happen, if it was communicated earlier, then I guess we would have known, or you would have known that that budget could have gone that way. But I could see where, you know, you're not knowing that that would have happened. I can see your intent was never that.
If I had known, I mean, it would be something I mean, it would be a conflict of interest had I known it was going to be expedited the way it was. I mean, that's clear. But I didn't, I mean, up to the asking for funds, that was all I knew about.
Maybe Miss Sally should have told you about it when it got and called you and said, hey, this is where the funds are going.
What we were told, that it was in a bundled bill with other community programs, that he bundled all together under one House bill, and then it was specifically for community programs, community service programs.
Right.
And that's what he told me, this is what it is, it's being, and that's
But maybe
it.
when it got further and he knew that he was getting funding, maybe he should have
I
contacted you or contacted the superintendent and say, hey, guess what? We got passed, this is it, they might be calling you, you know what I mean?
I don't,
And I'm not trying to stir the waters, but I think if he assumed that MJ was telling us, then he wouldn't feel the need to do that.
well, I think we're on that same page, that we looked at it as something separate from the school district and the committee. So I don't know if he, I can't speak for him, but it was community focused kind of thing.
Was Representative Missilli aware that the grant would have gone through? Department of Education?
I can't answer that because I don't know what he was aware of. I don't. This is the first time we've done something like this, so I can't speak as to what he would be.
And this is because she went to Miss Sally, right? This has nothing to do with us as a board member fundraising for other people.
No.
Fundraising, no.
Okay. This is because she went to our
And asked for
legislature.
something.
Okay.
I asked
I
for
need to
state
get off
funding.
everybody.
I helped facilitate a meeting so we can request state funding. I didn't ask for a grant or an earmark.
No, and that's not the issue, how it got through. The
No.
issue is being asked in the first place. Yeah.
Well, I thought, like I said, it was my understanding, and I will explore it further, just so that I'm clear with myself, so this doesn't transpire again as to the exercising our abilities as public officials for not only our school district, which student achievement is our first, one of our first high priorities, but also for our community, and what those limitations can look like. So.
Does anyone have anything else? I guess we just need a reassurance that in the future, he will definitely speak to myself and the superintendent, or whoever's the chair in the future, and not go to our representatives and ask them for money in any form unless we've all agreed that that's what you're going to do.
Even if it's, and just for clarification, not for intent, even if it has nothing to do with the school district, but it could be a community-based program or organization, or, I understand the reservation, but the thing, we are who we are.
That's what I think you're not getting.
No, I am getting, but I just want to make sure the clarity is there so that I don't misinterpret it in any other way, and that what I'm understanding is exactly what your intent is.
But I'm a little worried about what is, it seems to me that you feel, I don't want to put the words in your mouth, but threatened or nervous or whatever. Not nervous, I don't see you as nervous. But I think, what is the problem with just running it by myself and Mary?
I don't have any problem. If that's what you'd prefer, I'll run everything by, but it shouldn't be just me. If that's the understanding of the consensus.
They all run it by me. If something's going to Mary or something's happening, I get a phone call or I get an email from everybody else.
Very good. I'd be happy to.
And I've been saying this for the last how many years, that this is the way we're supposed to be doing it, then we won't get into trouble. I'll get into trouble if I tell you the wrong thing. But that's...
Again, if you could understand my perspective, not knowing, since, as I said, and I understand that you want to, if anyone should do that again for any community, anything like that, to run it by you. Even, like I said, it was my understanding that this was separate from this here. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that was the reason. I wasn't trying to hide anything, but just to reiterate.
No, we all agree.
I hear,
we all agree with that you're not going, but our other issue is the future. So we just want to make sure for the future that this doesn't happen again. And somehow with what you're saying to us, I don't get the feeling that you see the big picture, and I
Don't
hope that we
assume what I'm
can.
thinking, because I'll tell you, I understand.
don't know,
I
yeah.
understand, thank you. I understand.
Okay, yeah. Anyone else? All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Mrs. Carroll, second. Mrs. Bonish, all those in favor? Okay, unanimous, Kim.